Gary, before we're gonna, is that economic, what does that go by? And that's,
Employment enhancement area.
Yeah.
Enhanced employment.
and that's part of the
Now, it's actually an enhanced employment area.
enhanced employment area.
What
The other way around.
Oh.
Employment.
Which E
did I say?
comes first?
Exactly.
Enhanced employment area.
Yeah.
And that is on the agenda for May 4th for council.
Yes, first reading.
Yes.
And that is coupled with what we're doing.
The way this will happen today, I should wait for the meeting to start, but the way this will happen today is we will start the clock. In other words, if we approve this today, then the city council will start the advertising for their public hearing, which would be on the 18th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And of course, like anything else, the EEA is gonna take 3 readings. So they'll have a reading on the 4th, they'll have a reading on the 18th, and then they'll have a reading June, that first week of
First.
June, yeah, June 1st. And so they will review this with their public hearing on the 18th. Approval of this, which would include the EEA, so we'd be providing them with the EEA and with TIF. Council will have to vote on on this resolution up or down. No modifications. If they vote it down, then the CRA could reconsider a resolution that's different, meaning realistically, if it went to the city council, if they approved it as presented, including the EEA, there would still be another reading to occur on the EEA, so it would be approved subject to the EEA getting approved through the 3rd reading. So you could have the votes on the 1st reading, 2nd reading, get to 3rd reading, vote the EEA down, all of a sudden this redevelopment plan is no longer valid, and it would have to come back to CRA, we'd have to reconsider it without EEA, resubmit as a TIF standalone.
We are just saying they've met the criteria.
We're saying, well, we've said they've met the criteria, and we're moving forward a recommendation to the council to approve. That's what the resolution's doing, is we're recommending approval of it.
Yeah.
And then the council has to discuss it in a public hearing, and that's been properly advertised, and then it's an up or down vote. They're either gonna approve it in whole, or they're gonna oppose it in whole. And so, if it goes down, and if they approve it, it would still be subject to, the final reading on the EEA that has to occur. And they will probably have had the 2nd reading done prior to looking at this on the agenda, would be my guess. And what I'm trying to find,
That's where that's in that.
Yeah.
In that resolution.
right, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, so we need, the redevelopment plan is what's missing here. Did you get that? This is just a resolution.
They gave us the redevelopment plan at the last meeting, right? Yeah.
But I didn't see that. It's part of the plan, it's not a separate and distinct item in the.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what
we
it
gotta have
is.
it.
This one didn't change.
Okay.
It's in the planning commission agenda book.
Yeah, I've got it here now. I was looking for any changes. I did ask Bacon why the city's EEA resolution was specific to the mall project, because it could be a broad, we're just approving it up to 600 acres. And then you could look at each development project on its own, and you'd have the statute already in place, or the ordinance already in place. So, I
I
don't,
think we're ready.
is Bacon coming?
It's 10:30.
He never told me he wasn't,
Just give
as
him a
far as
call.
I knew he was.
I was a little nervous doing things without our legal counsel present. Let me just confirm if he's coming or not.
you?
You didn't bring your phone, Edie, huh?
What?
You didn't bring your phone?
Oh, yes, I did. But it's off, I hope.
Oh, I was just,
Wants to know if he can call me later, so maybe I'll respond and say, are you coming?
Yeah, no, it's off.
oh, I thought you had a message.
Yeah, I did.
I meant Edie had a message.
Hey, Mark, just heads up, I think this is being streamed.
Okay. So don't say anything about my wife.
Well, you can if you want.
And we had our NLU graduation the other night. I made a joke to the group about my wife, and then I was told afterwards that they were putting on Facebook Live. Now, the good news is my wife's not a Facebooker, so I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at this point,
She
I'll
has
know.
friends who are.
I'll know if she becomes one. You'd think I'd learn after a while, but I don't. But I don't.
Well, you know, if verbal comedy is so difficult in these ages, maybe we'll get back to the great physical comedy of Abbott and Costello.
There you go. There you go.
That's safer.
Well, I was using the analogy, my part on Nebraska University is teaching a class on wealth creation and building wealth. And it was, and I tell the group about Dr. Ed Seafried, who went over the Soviet Union many years ago, and he was speaking to a group there, and somebody there raised their hand and said, Dr. Ed, I'm trying to figure out if the average American makes $51,000 a year, and they spend 35% of their income on housing, and they spend this percent on food and this percent on clothing, well, what do they spend the rest of the money on? And Ed said, well, I guess I'd have to say stuff. Okay? And so, you know, if you think about it, that's right. And I said, so I can attest to that because I said, when my wife spends spends money on stuff, it gets delivered by Amazon or UPS. And then about a year later, if I'm lucky, it's going in the garbage and we're rolling it out to the curb. So that's stuff. So if you want to create wealth, it's not about how much you make. It's about how much you spend and what you spend it on.
Yeah.
So live beneath your means and you'll grow wealth.
And then there's George Carlin's routine about stuff.
Yeah, that's
One
right.
of his only two clean routines, the other one being baseball versus football.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've got no response from Mr. Bacon, so we're gonna go without him. And then he can go clean up the mess afterwards, so. All right, well, let's call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the North Platte Community Redevelopment Authority. And, the time is, I guess, 10:38. We will be conducting the meeting according to the Open Meetings Act. A copy of that's on the wall over there by Judy Clark. So help yourself reading that if you'd like to read what happens in an Open Meetings Act. The purpose of the meeting today, first would be to do roll call.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Stefka,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yeah.
Patterson,
Yeah.
Burley.
Okay, I'll declare that we do have a quorum. And with that, let's move to approval of the minutes.
I move to approve.
Moved by Patterson,
I second those.
Second by Lucas. Discussion? Are you ready to vote?
Jacobson,
Yes.
Stefka,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yep.
Okay, motion carries. Minutes are approved. And I believe the next item then that we have, the big item of the day, would be to consider the approval of resolution number 2021-2. This would be the resolution that is noting that the Planning Commission has reviewed the redevelopment plan for the North Platte Mall LLC project. And they've come back without any changes. And so at this point, we would be looking at approving the resolution, which would be recommending to the city council in a public hearing to adopt the redevelopment plan. The redevelopment plan, of course, then would include the granting of a TIF bond, and it would also be recommending the approval of an enhanced employment area, EEA, and a bond that would be associated with that and repaid from the occupation tax that would be assessed. The city has not yet approved an EEA, and they will likely be considering that on 3 readings. First reading will be May 4th, second reading would be May 18th, third reading would be June 1st. So the city council, the advertising schedule would be that if we approve this resolution, the city council will then advertise for a public hearing on the TIF and EEA redevelopment project, which this the development plan would be submitted to them for. Should they choose to approve that in the public hearing, it would be approved subject to the completion of the 3 readings for the EEA. Because the EEA would be a part of this resolution. So we would wait until that were done before the next piece would move. Obviously, the mall owners want to move as quickly as they can, and that's why we're trying to keep this in an expedited dual track. So that's where we're heading. So with that, I think we've looked at this the redevelopment plan, and again, to be clear, we're really talking about, I believe the number is $8.5 million on the on the TIF bond, and another roughly $7.5 million on the EEA. And then again, so that everyone's clear on how this gets repaid, I think we're all familiar with TIF. We would simply go in, issue the bond. Developer would write us a check to fund the bond. We would then give them their dollars back to use for the project. Then we would notify the taxing authorities that when this thing gets reappraised, reassessed each year, they would get the increment, they would get the tax increment that would flow back through the taxes, incremental tax collections, and that's how their bond would be repaid. So again, the developer funds the bond, we give them the money back and we hand them the bond. Then the developer will pay the incremental tax increases, and they'll get those dollars back to retire their bond. So there's no tax dollars involved from the public. This is a self-funding through the growth in the tax base as a result of their project. The EEA, the way that would work is that bond would be funded in a similar fashion. The bond would be issued, and they would fund it. They would receive those dollars back just like on TIF, and then what they would do is they would then, all of the tenants that would be normally collecting sales tax would also be subject to the 1.95% occupation tax. It would be collected by the merchants inside the mall properties. Those dollars would then be collected and paid over to the city, and then the city would then send those dollars to the bondholder of the EEA bond, which would likely be the developer, and that's how that bond would be retired. That plan would run up to 20 years or until the bond's retired, whichever comes first. Very similar to TIF, which is TIF's a 15-year, EEA would be 20. Questions at all?
Anybody want, any public comment, or do we take it? Anybody have any questions?
Okay, questions among the board members? Again, we're acting purely in an advisory capacity. Our role as a CRA is to encourage redevelopment projects that fit the criteria. Again, our biggest test is to figure out the if not but for test. We're not interested in applying TIF to projects that are already gonna be built. And obviously, if you look at all of the blight and substandard designated areas, there's a lot of projects that have been built within that area, none of which applied for TIF because they were gonna be built regardless. But when we look at situations like this, where this would not or could not be built without TIF, that's our job then to encourage those applications and to move them forward to the city council, who has the ultimate decision-making authority as to whether they want to grant it or not. Our role is simply to do the litmus test to figure out if they qualify and make recommendations to the city council as their representatives to do the due diligence. And that's really what our role is. So I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution in a second, and then we could go to further discussion.
Do we need to read that like we do in the city council? Or
No.
Okay, I make a recommendation that we, motion resolution number 2021-2 from the Community Redevelopment Authority, City of North Platte.
I second.
All right, moved by Stefka, second by Tryon. Patterson.
Oh,
Taking that with you.
remember you're on TV?
Yeah, that's right. Discussion. Are you ready to vote?
Jacobson,
Yes.
Stefka,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Patterson.
Okay.
Okay, the motion carries. I don't believe there's anything else on the schedule. One thing I would say that just kind of housekeeping pieces, I think the mayor will need to, in June, well, we're gonna have a few more meetings that are gonna run along the way here. Obviously, we're gonna get an opportunity, I would guess, depending on where things go, on something with sustainable beef. There's a number of pieces that would have to occur there. We'll get into that, I think, at our next meeting, and we'll be trying to get you a little more lead time, hopefully, Edie. I know it's been a couple of really short call meetings, but we'll try to get that scheduled. The other thing is in June is our annual meeting, so you'll have the opportunity to vote on a new chair in June, and we'll also have the opportunity to I think Tim Brulliette comes up for his term, his 5-year term would be up. Everybody, this is a 5-member board, and so one of us comes up every year, so we're on 5-year terms with one either rolling off or being renewed every 5 years. So the mayor will have to decide what he wants to do there, and if he's gonna make a replacement, that would be coming in our June meeting. And of course, that replacement would be subject, the mayor makes the appointment, the council has to confirm that appointment. So that'll be something that the city will have to look at. Stay tuned, there will be more meetings. Obviously, we're anticipating some more projects coming at us, and there's a little bit of activity that'll occur once we get to those. So with this, again, this will be going to the May 18th city council meeting, and so I will plan to be at that meeting, and I believe Mr. Bacon will probably show up there too. Anything else? All right, if not, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Back to retirement, you mean? Oh.
You still what?
He's done the pictures.
Oh, you work on property?
No.
No, over on the north end, or?
They're still distributing